Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blue Star Rising, Templar Awakening. Michael Henry Dunn here with our esteemed friend and co-host, Reverend Maia Nartoomid, and, as you can see, our very special guest, Dr. Marguerite Mary Rigoglioso, who is here to share with us a wonderful book that has so much resonance with a lot of what we've shared with you in the last year. Actually, it is since we began the channel. And so, Marguerite, I'd just like to, if you'll allow me, to begin by sharing your background with everyone. So Marguerite Mary Rigoglioso is the PhD, is the foremost authority on the history of virgin birth, and has taught graduate and undergraduate courses in both the United States and the United Kingdom. She is the director of her own esoteric school, Seven Sisters Mystery School, dedicated to restoring knowledge about the sacred feminine and to empowering people on their own non-traditional spiritual journeys. She is the author of The Cult of Divine Birth in Ancient Greece and Virgin Mother Goddesses of Antiquity. And her most recent book, which is debuting, I believe, on April 6th, only a week away, is The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, Mary, and the Lineage of Virgin Births, which is the topic of our conversation today. So this is just among the fortuitous synchronicities that seem to be accelerating in the world these days. The chance of our meeting you, Marguerite, and our thanks to our dear friend Alex Utterman, a wonderful healer and visionary, for making the introduction. So welcome. We are so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. I am truly honored and delighted to be here to talk to you today, both of you.
All right. Well, I'd like to start by just diving right in with this wonderful new offering that you have brought forward. And again, this is we're discussing the mystery tradition of miraculous conception, Mary, and the lineage of virgin births. So what's the basic premise of the book? What we call the elevator pitch idea that you're getting across with the book?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, and I haven't necessarily rehearsed this, but
Oh, good.
it's a new, I would say, breakthrough exploration about Mother Mary. And it is looking particularly at one of her suppressed gospels, which most people know as the infancy gospel of James, if they know it at all. And what I do is I mine that and I cross-reference the research that I've done in ancient Greece and beyond that through the ancient Mediterranean world, including Egypt, to understand what this gospel is telling us, which is basically that Mary was a trained woman in divine birth who was part of a lineage that extended to her mother Anne, her Aunt Elizabeth, mother of John the Baptist. I know a favorite topic of yours, John the Baptist, right, Michael? We can go
Oh,
into
yes.
that. And it goes all the way back to Sarah, the matriarch of the entire Hebrew culture. And that's just within their grouping, okay? Because this is really something that has gone on all over the world. But what I do is I tease out all the symbols and the indicators in this gospel to show how Mary was a trained priestess, how this began from her childhood with her own divine birth by her mother Anne, how it continued into the Hebrew temple where she was delivered over at 3 years old, and how it culminated in her conception of Jesus, her conscious conception of Jesus. And then the gospel goes on to tell about some of the travails that they had while she was pregnant and after she gave birth. So it's basically saying, yeah, virgin birth was a real thing. Mary did it. Her mother did it before her. This wasn't an accidental happenstance. they deliberately willed the entire Christed enterprise.
No, I have read and heard credible accounts that the lineage that Mary was trained in was essentially an Isis mystery school. Does that line up with what you're finding?
What I found is that she is a reincarnation of Isis. She's in the lineage of Isis. Mary is her final, as we know her as Mary, was her final incarnation. And with that, she achieved full goddesshood.
So I see Maia smiling. Please jump in.
I can't help myself. That Thoth said the same thing. And in fact, when we're working with the hosting skulls here, there's the whole thing with the dweller crystal skulls, and the hosting skulls connect to the soul's incarnating field. And the Isis one, Thoth has said, was also Mary, Mother Mary.
Blessed be. Okay, and I have to say, Maia, that one of the first ways that I was introduced to this material was through Thoth. Via Drunvalo Melchizedek. Now, I don't know how much you're connected with him, but he's got the ancient secret of the flower of life thing. And I think that I had already gotten the downpour about virgin birth. Standing in my brother's apartment, I had been reading this book by Anna Maria Corradini called Mothers. All right. She was talking about Demeter and Persephone, and she said the way she was describing, she said it was parthenogenesis, that Demeter gave birth to Persephone with nothing having to do with Zeus. And I don't know what it was, the combination of what she was writing, I just went, shoom. Oh my gosh, the women were doing this. And then I think it was after that I read in Drunvalo's book that he says, well, I don't know what to do with this, but Thoth said to me that virgin birth was real, and he has a few little things to say about it. And I'm like, you're darn tootin' it's real, and we're going to find out what this is all about. And then when I started my dissertation writing at the California Institute of Integral Studies, I wanted to do a dissertation, the opus maximus about priestesses of ancient Greece. I was going to compile every single thing said about them. Well, that didn't happen, but what ended up happening is, in looking at all these ancient references, I found all of this material. Oh my gosh, these women were giving divine birth. It was through different phases and different, stages of eventual degeneration, and how I started realizing how the Egyptian queens were involved in all of this, and the birth of the pharaohs in the pharaonic period. And then, of course, at this whole same time, I was starting to receive information about Mary, and I thought that I was going to write this stuff a long time ago. Back when I was doing my dissertation, I finished it in 2007. I thought I was going to include all the material about Mary, but the dissertation was already 600 pages, and it was broken up into my first two books that you mentioned, The Cult of Divine Birth in Ancient Greece and Virgin Mother Goddesses of Antiquity. But I started to teach this material, analyzing this gospel, this infancy gospel of James, and I eventually felt the nudge, recently. And I think the timing is breathtaking. I was writing it just before COVID hit. I got the contract the end of March, just when COVID hit and everybody went into lockdown. And then it's been in production this whole year. And now it's coming out at this other strangely momentous time where all of these things are coming to the fore. Your transmissions, Maia, that are accelerating, it seems to me. It's all kind of being pieced together now. And I just feel that this womb piece is the absolute missing link to all of these channelings that have gone on before. It is the piece that's going to unlock everything, including our pathway to the new earth.
Yes, absolutely. May I inject something here for a moment? Well, as you probably know if you've been watching the shows, because I've been talking about it a lot, but I have this was called Quantum Cube Logica Project, which is now, Thoth has just renamed it today. Let's see if I can get it right. Quantum Logica Integrative Program and Mysterium Teachings. Wow, that's a long title, but we're just going to say Quantum Cube Integrative. So in this program, we just finished with broadcasting, or Thoth prefers to call it streaming, so I guess I'll have to change that term, streaming into the planetary whole, was streaming into what Thoth calls, I never heard of this before until he gave it to me recently, called the Cave of Mothers. And he calls it a womb cave of solid, quartz crystals, everything from clear to dark amethyst, but they're all in that range, pinks and whatever. But this is a giant cave. I don't know how big it is. It's really big, and it's a womb cave, and there's no exit to the surface. There's a spiral of crystalline field that goes down, and it goes into the hollow earth. And there's a smaller but still impressive cave that exits there. So the mystics that work with this, whether they're inner earth or ancient ones that knew about it and did it, they have to project themselves. And even if they're in the inner earth, they can sit in that cave if they want, but they still have to project themselves to the womb. And it's the Cave of Mothers, so that is obviously the womb of mothers. So we went through a process of 3 days working with this, streaming energy into it to make a connection, to be able to path it into the global sphere, because it contains it contains programming consciousness from the Akasha that is a very liberating frequency for the matching of the male and female energy, the harmonizing of the male and female energy. Anyway, there's more to it, but I just thought I'd put that in there because you're talking about the womb, and that's just what we finished doing,
Oh, that's remarkable. Oh, I just thinking about that cave. Wow. Let's all just go there now.
Yeah.
I'm on board with that.
We had
One of the things,
amazing experiences, different persons involved in this. It was quite powerful.
One of the things that Maia brought forth recently when talking about the reparations of the original divine blueprint of human DNA, and talking about how that was done in ancient times, the phases of reparation from the Sun Lords, both male and female, who were assisting humanity in essentially repairing damage that had been done to our DNA through meddling of various other factions. And the last reparation is ongoing as we speak. And one of the things that I found so remarkable that Maia brought forward is the news that the reparation underway now actually has to do with virgin birth through a number of women who are trained and chosen and prepared and came into this life for it. But clarify this for me, Maia, if you can. But I believe that it was not necessarily physical birth, but on an etheric level, and yet having a direct impact on the reparation of our DNA. Is that right?
Yes, there's really two parts to it. One is not a physical birth, but still experiencing this pregnancy of a certain nature and a birthing of a being on an inner plane dimension, but still, Thoth said there's no such thing as spiritual and physical. It's different gradients of energy. We can call it that, the higher one, the spiritual or physical, but it's really gradients. So on a particular gradient that we could still call physical, but not our physical, from this level, certain women are birthing children on that level, and it has to do with integrating the whole pattern of humanity. It's a large topic, so I'll just say that. Now, the other aspect of this is, and this, I have to be careful how to word this so people won't misunderstand it. It's some kind of a genetic program where ultra beings, highly ultra spiritual beings, are joining forces with male hosts to bring a certain energy into the female womb that is birthed as a child. Now, this isn't some kind of genetic tampering or anything like that. We're not giving birth to aliens. It's not that. It is this cooperative effort on a higher plane permission level from the male soul, the male embodied person, it's his soul, to say, okay, I agree to join with this other male being of this high frequency, almost angelic, but not quite. And, together we bring this energy into the sperm, and together we inseminate the female host. And this is something that has happened even in the ancient past, but right now it's a very specialized program that's ongoing. It's not massive, not everybody's doing it, but it's targeting just the right genetic frequencies, because this whole kind of thing, and what they did originally with the reparations, and before that, the original beings that came down, they weren't tampering with anything. They created this level of experience for us, and they were helping us to bring it back to equilibrium. And that's all they've been doing. If they wanted to tamper, we'd be a lot different right now, probably a lot better. But they're helping us to do it ourselves, but they're integrating their field of consciousness in that patterning, because, as they say to me, they are our kindred. They're not an alien species.
Yes. And there is so much. Can I riff for a little bit?
Please do. I was about to ask you to.
Okay, so this has been a very ancient technology, because it's what I discern in my original research. And it's what I describe that was going on in Egypt. It was going on in the Middle East. It was going on in North Africa and beyond. And there were different phases of it, where the original phase that I receive is that the woman would become one with the soul song logos of the universe, and she would give birth parthenogenetically. So she was like lining up her abilities to become the androgyne and give forth that divine child literally onto the planet. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then the next phase was the gods started coming in, or these beings, whoever, where they are interfacing with the woman in her trance state. And there is a divine conception on the astral plane that is physicalized in her womb. And oftentimes these would be male children, sometimes female. Then there is a later phase where the woman is the queen or the priestess. She is mating with the king priest, who is now a physicalized person who is embodying the energy of the god, getting out of the way. This is Egypt, pharaohs, and impregnating her. But the thing about this is it's a latter day phenomenon whereby the male can now claim the child into the male line, claim the name of the child, claim the lineage of the child, and claim the training of the child. And it was broken away from the women. Okay. And then there's another method whereby Isis, when Mary was alive as Isis, so what I'm just channeling right now is that she was doing this in a few different ways so that she could make the actual culmination in Jesus, because she was like, in that life, I've really got to do this right. With Osiris, she did it posthumously. He was already on the other side. He was dismembered. She had to create the dildo, the artificial golden phallus, mate with it, and do her interdimensional impregnation with Osiris that way for the Horus, okay, to come through. So there were numbers of different ways. There was a degeneration of this process, and these male gods turned from solar rishis or lords to Zeus, who's an Anunnaki reptilian, okay? These gods of the Egyptian, of the Greek pantheon started raping these girls in their trance states. And then you had the outright alien abductions, which is more a modern day thing, or I don't know, when exactly that started in, but certainly it's been going on of late. And it's the total, like Lisa Renee talks about things getting inverted, perverted, the mirror reflection, the complete opposite, the satanic use of it. And so that's what started happening with these alien abductions. They went right into this place that I think you're talking about, Maya, of this interdimensional kind of thing where they're either birthing into other dimensions or they're birthing, I'm saying, into this dimension. But then they're just taking over that pathway, the complete hijacking. And this is in part how these hybriding projects went on. Okay. And I talk about this in both the Cult of Divine Birth in Ancient Greece and the new book, The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, where I talk about, we have these texts. Okay. There's this one text. It's the Testament of Reuben, where it describes, which is one of the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, kind of an apocryphal Jewish gospel, if you will, where it's describing how the Watchers, this is the technology. We're going to get the description right now. The Watchers, who are essentially these Nephilim Anunnaki parents, they're watching these human women. They get, first of all, they have an agenda of impregnation. Second of all, they have an agenda of sexual predation. And while the human woman is having sex with her male partner, these Watchers get in her fantasy. And they appear there as a very attractive human male. So the woman is getting confused in this lovemaking episode, and she's starting to fantasize about this being who's suddenly appearing in her space. And her orgasm and conception gets tied to that guy, not this guy. That's how the impregnation happens. That's how these hybriding projects happen. And I'm stating it here and now because this is the key to all of us to unlock this bullshit that needs to stop on planet Earth. Okay? They got into women's wombs. It wasn't just some tech, because here's the thing. They know, Zeus knew, as techie as they are, they still need the female womb. The authentic goddess womb, and then the human womb that was a replica of it, okay? They can't get away with it if they want an authentic and souled being to come in. Even Zeus knew that when he tried to hijack and create a new version of Athena out of his head. He still needed some level, of the womb. He could not just do this like out of his own phallus. What did he create? He created Athena, who's like a pale version of her original wisdom self, okay, to be in service to the patriarchy. So the way we know in this description of these Watchers is that the women gave birth to beings that grew as little teeny acorn seeds into these big, huge giants. That's how they populated the planet with these hybrid Nephilim human people. Okay, they were giants. And so this was this mechanism that kept going on, where they had to use the human womb. They had to rape it, they had to hijack it, they had to abduct it, they had to do, and they're still abducting today. And that's why I'm saying the human women of planet Earth need to say, no, we will not let our wombs be used for this anymore. No, closed, key, lock, done, goodbye.
Yeah. Right. And what you're saying here just gives me more sense, makes more sense what this other thing I was talking about, where on a consensual level, a male personage, allows this angelic being to merge with him for the sperm. And this is something that's giving it back to the spiritual conceptions, to the, it's bringing it back out rather than the perversion of what happened previously. It's reversing it, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this has been used backward and forward. It's been used by the pharaohs. It was already a degenerated thing going on there. It's been used by the kingships, divine kingship. That was that this guy was virgin born of his queen mother. originally before the satanic reptilians took it over and then started creating all these bizarre royal families around the earth. Okay, King Arthur was the last legitimately born divine king, and even so, there was shenanigans there that Merlin had to figure out with Uther Pendragon, to trick Igraine into that conception. You always know that it's a virgin or a ritual conception when you get the following. He appeared to her in the likeness of, and then had sex with her. Okay, so those appeared to her in the likeness of, that's a ritual encounter. But she didn't know that it was Uther Pendragon, not her husband, but Uther Pendragon was in cahoots with Merlin to get this Arthur onto the planet as the last legitimate Christed being, who is now coming back and being woken up from his stasis, according to Lisa Renee, and partly things that you're saying, Maia. So we're like awakening these divinely born beings, and we're saying, no, we are not going to do a Rosemary's Baby bullshit thing on the planet anymore. These reptilians and these Illuminati families have to stop this crap. Yeah. They have to stop using virgin birth for these purposes. Okay, so I am on my big high horse about this, and it all emerges from what I understood about virgin birth and what I know about Mary, because Mary was the complete opposite of this. She was the highest being who gave birth to the highest level avatar ever possible on this planet, because of all the work she had done in those millions of lifetimes that Sri Kaleshwar talks about, that she had those millions of lifetimes. And basically Steiner tells us she's the reincarnation of Isis. Okay, practicing, around until they could finally get it, like, hey, we need to bring in this Christed avatar to this planet to crack open this thing and get these Nephilim off. Okay, so she, in the midst of reptilian Roman Empire, which was infiltrated through the Vestal Virgins, which is a whole other story, she, in the midst of all that, is giving birth to the highest divine being and then trying to escape Herod's BS, that he's like sniffs it out, his people sniff it out, and they're like, oh my God, the divine avatar has been born, the soothsayers from Iran said so, where is he? And it's simultaneously, John was born because he was born in the same ritual as Mary. Okay, these women did it in a ritual, a group of 8, which we can discuss. But that's what's in this infancy gospel. And her Aunt Elizabeth, the Quran tells us that Elizabeth was her aunt, her mother's sister.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's another connection here too, and that is that, according to Thoth, that is that he says that, this is kind of different from other people's, but I just go when I get here, that Mary Magdalene and Yeshua had only one child, and that child was conceived after Yeshua ascended. So it was another type of virgin birth, and it was conceived on Ahona, and his name was John Martinus. Martinus was this name of the guardian Greek guy that brought Mary to Iona, and she gave him the last name that. But anyway, so John Martinus was another conceived in a divine birth, but a divine birth from Yeshua's presence into Mary.
You see, that's the Isian practice. That's the Isis practice. So Magdalene was doing the Isis practice of the posthumous impregnation, according to that timeline that you're describing. But Mother Mary was doing pure parthenogenesis.
Yeah. Well, and according to Thoth, Mary of Magdalene was also Nephlis, the sister of Isis, if you can put it in a mythic standpoint. But
wow.
The being that we call Nephlis is a human.
Okay. Being. So, well, then they were all part of a feather, because they were all in the same womb as the brothers and sisters together, right? So it's Mother Mary, Christed Master, Jesus, Magdalene, John the Baptist, Anne, Elizabeth, the mother, okay? So, Elizabeth was in the same divine birth ritual with Mary. 8 women weaving. This is what I'm teasing out, and I'm able to decode this gospel because of all the research I did in ancient Greece and elsewhere. They were weaving the temple veil.
I would love to to share just a little bit to let everyone know. I mean, obviously, Marguerite, you have done years of deep research, bringing all of this forward. We're seeing all of the different lines of alignment between Greece and Egypt, India, etc. And for those who may look for additional backup, I mean, to me, the presence is alive right this second here among the three of us are tangible. There's also the nice little coincidence of this on my chest.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that.
Yeah,
The person
I
who
wear this
made
always.
this is Pamela Minton. She's the same person who told me about your video.
My dear Pamela.
There you go.
Yeah, both Michael and I were gifted that by Pamela. I have it too.
So I knew I had to wear this today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
some people.
I'm telling you, I need a strap right now to keep me in the seat because I have been like wanting to rock it off since we started. It's such intense energy.
So I'm really being prompted to share another thing with you right here, Marguerite. Phil told me years ago about this person called Torhana. And Torhana has a larger name that I can't pronounce well. I have difficulty in pronouncing some of the things that Thoth brings me. So he will give me a simpler version, but I have it spelled out in my material, Tarjanok or something like that. And I didn't know about the legend of Skoda, and the Egyptian princess that came over to Scotland and all that. I didn't know that when I received this about Torhana, but it's one and the same, only Thoth has a much broader version, shall we say, of that entity. And he says that her soul is the same soul as Mother Mary.
Yeah.
And so, excuse me, cat fur. I have 3 cats. So I'll share with you more information on her, but she might be an interesting piece.
That would be really cool. Well, Sri Kaleshwar said Mother Mary in his book, The Real Life and Teachings of Jesus Christ, which I'm sure you're familiar with, that she had millions of lifetimes. So she had a long time to perfect this and to go through different iterations. And
yeah.
Let me just share here that as many of our viewers may know, my spiritual path for many years has been Kriya Yoga through the Self-Realization Fellowship teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. And one of the major missions that he had to accomplish, apart from bringing the sacred technique of Kriya Yoga out of the veils of priestly secrecy where it had been hidden for centuries, was also to clarify and bring forward the sacred science within the Gospels. And it was meticulously prepared by Self-Realization Fellowship it took 4 decades after his passing before they were ready to, and it also had to do with the timing as to whether the world was ready for it or not. And I pulled out just one passage from his 2-volume commentary on the Gospels, which is called The Second Coming of Christ, subtitle, The Resurrection of the Christ Within You. And if you'll just give me a second, because in my elaborate setup here, I'm going to have to step delicately over several cables in order not to tip this whole thing over while I get this book. So hang on just a moment, if you would.
The one supporting your video, but you sent me that link, and I'm going to get that 2-volume set, because clearly there will be something in there that I need to hear.
Yeah, it's this is the book, The Second Coming of Christ, The Resurrection of Christ Within You, beautifully published by Self-Realization Fellowship Publishers. And early on in the book, Yogananda validates the sacred science of virgin birth and absolutely affirms the gospel story of it. He also brings forward the infancy gospel.
Okay.
And this, if you want, I mean, for me, I don't need any further backup than Marguerite's research, her presence, her being, the work she's bringing forward, the blend of the scholarly depth and detail with the spiritual authenticity is good enough for me. And if you want the additional backup of someone who is acknowledged as one of the great enlightened teachers of modern times, Paramahansa Yogananda, for those who don't know, the author of Autobiography of a Yogi, widely acknowledged as a great spiritual classic. And in Discourse 2, there are about 10 pages on virgin birth.
Wow.
And they have,
hearing this.
Yeah, and because it was so meticulously prepared, the footnotes reference scientific backup, reference parthenogenesis, reference, it's all highly detailed. But let me just read a passage here.
Yeah.
Where Yogananda says, many saints have been born in the natural way and some in the immaculate way. The great ones who have attained liberation retain their individuality in spirit, and at God's behest to return to the world as saviors, they can take a physical body, either by immaculate conception or natural birth. In higher world ages, they may even do so by direct materialization, though that is not for the eyes of unenlightened times. The mode of birth does not matter, nor does it necessarily indicate the degree of divinity. Sexual creation has the selfish sexual instincts of the parents in it. Therefore, some saints choose to be conceived in the immaculate way, the pure system of conception. So it is a fact that Jesus was created by immaculate conception. His mother Mary, she who had found favor with God, was filled with the Holy Ghost cosmic vibration. Quote, the Holy Ghost shall come upon thee, and the power of the highest shall overshadow thee. This sacred creative vibration, suffused with the reflection of God as the Christ consciousness, entered the ovum in Mary's womb, immaculately creating the germ cell of life into which entered the soul of Jesus, the individualized Christ consciousness. From this pristine cell, according to the pattern inherent in the soul of Jesus, grew the body in which Jesus the Christ was born. It is not a myth. Gautama Buddha, as also other avatars, was born in the same way. And one last sentence here. There is a cosmic metaphysical symbolism in the wondrous conception and birth of Jesus. His incarnate Christ consciousness came immaculately through the Virgin Mary. Likewise, the universal Christ intelligence was born or reflected in the cosmic body of pure vibratory creation, the cosmic Virgin Mary. Through the instrumentality of God the Father, the Holy Ghost cosmic vibration, Om Mahaprakriti, is analogous to the cosmic Virgin Mary because it is thus the mother of the immanent universal Christ intelligence, the Son of God and of all created objects.
Wow. And guess what? It's all fractalizing through all of us now, right? We had emailed that, and each of us is going to be able to have that virgin birth of the Christ itself within ourselves. And what I would add to what Yogananda is saying is that it's the female part of it, the female orchestration, that I bring forth in this new book. And that was kind of in my other two books as well, but in particular this with Mary, because that's the missing link. It's the female will, the female wisdom, the female agenda in all of this. Now, Sri Kaleshwar gets at that a little bit more, that, she was working with Divine Mother about how can we help this planet along here, So it was in her mastermind already. But what I'm showing is that it's not just about the materialization in the ovum. It's about all of the work that she did to get it there.
Yeah.
That's the missing link.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Like, I cannot scream this loudly enough. I've been looking at this stuff for going on 20 years now. And it's this, the feminine always goes missing. Like, yeah, Buddha was born. Well, who was his mother? You know, all we hear is, oh, he was born out of a rib or something. See, these strange stories are always telling you divine conception,
Yes.
if you know how to look. But we then need to look at, what did it take that woman to get there? It took Mary millions of lifetimes to be able to get that ovum to go ding.
Mm-hmm.
Can you address, Marguerite, the nature of the Essene community, in which, you know, people who've done research into the Gnostic Gospels, or, you know, the work of Elaine Pagels, and who have an understanding that this was a community very much apart from Judaic tradition, conventional Judaic practice of that time, very much in tune with, you know, both Egyptian and Hindu or Buddhist understanding, that the purification, the conscious purification to be ready and receptive, the training. Could you go into a little bit, you know, what would that, I know you've described the 8, you know, the weaving of 8 women. When we do have absolutely verified historical documentation, Flavius Josephus, the Jewish historian who, you know, after the failure of the Jewish revolt, went to Rome and found work as a historian so they wouldn't kill him for rebelling against the empire, and gives us detailed descriptions, as I'm sure you know, of the Essene community. Yeah. Could you go into that a little bit? Because I think it brings it home to people.
Yes.
Okay, we're talking about Isis, we're talking about this exalted divine level of the divine feminine in form, bringing in this exalted consciousness in virgin birth. And folks, this is historical reality. You know, we are talking about, you know,
That's right.
human women who chose, you know, the souls who chose to be born in that time, kind of at the depth of Kali Yuga,
Yes.
to bring forward this absolutely necessary event. So anyway, that's my little
necessary event that is having its further birthings in a, you know, parthenogenetic way into our present time and our conversation and everybody else with this whole Christ consciousness situation of ascension that's going on, right? But it's also the Marian consciousness, okay? It's not just the Christ consciousness, it's the Christos Sophia Mary consciousness that is what is emerging in everyone, because it's got to be that kind of unified energy. Yes, I hint at the fact that these are Essenes in my book. What I specifically identify is the branch off of them called the Therapeutae, right? The Therapeutae. And that's where I really see Anne fitting in, and therefore this whole group, the Therapeutae. So they were like a kind of a branch of these Essenes, very much focused on the healing and so forth. So there are indications that Anne was doing these very practices. The fact of her creating her bedroom into a shrine, not having anything impure come in, that was a very Essene thing, or a very Therapeutae thing to do. They would create these home shrines, these private shrines. The fact that she's then, after she gave Mary over to the temple and she was so exalted of what was happening, she created a song. That's a very Essene Therapeutae thing to do, is to like write a song to God, or, you know. So yes, I think they were part of that. I mean, my research does touch on that just from this infancy gospel of James alone, which originally was called Birth of Mary. So that's how I refer to it throughout the entire book, is Birth of Mary.
Are you familiar with Corinne Helene's works? Corinne Helene? No. She goes back in the 30s and 40s, so she's no longer with us, but she has a whole institute thing that's still sort of undercover going on. You know, I mean, not undercover, but it's not, you know, big out there. And her works are really amazing. Her Bible interpretations, I would recommend. You can find them, you know, I don't think they're hugely expensive, but you can find the out of print Bible interpretations by Corinne Helene. IE or something like that. And anyway, I'm mentioning them because she goes into a lot of things you would be interested in. And one of the things is about, and she doesn't say a lot about it, and I've forgotten which volume it's in, but about how Yeshua and Mari went through a sacred ceremony, not a regular marriage ceremony, a sacred ceremony together on the steps of this temple that was part of what their family came out of. It was like a whole, they'd been in it and their parents had been in it, and it was part of this whole thing. Now, I don't think she mentions the Essenes specifically, but she doesn't deny that either. She's just stating this one beautiful ceremony. Anyway, it reminded me of that, so I thought I'd mention her works.
Are you familiar with the work of Claire Hartsong?
I've heard the name, but no, I'm not familiar with the work.
This is so bizarre. One of these, again, synchronicities. While I was doing this work on divine birth in Greece and Egypt, and by extension, Mary, during the 2000s, the early 2000s, she was channeling her books, Mary, grandmother of Jesus, Anna, grandmother of Jesus, and Anna, something like The Soul of the Magdalens or something like that. Two different books. I was getting it intellectually, and also through intuitional downpours. She was purely channeling, and she says that I'm pretty sure that they were completely Essenes. Okay. When I read her book after it was all said and done, again, I was led to it through a synchronicity. Like, I thought the person had said to get her book, and this person had said, no, I told you to get this other book. And I'm like, how did I end up with Claire Hartsong? They just came in and was like, no, get Claire Hartsong's book. So I started, and then I met her, and we were just like, oh my God. On the phone, she was saying to me, before we even met, she said, well, these were light conceptions. She said, just like that. These were light conceptions. And I thought, boom. Because I knew from the ancient Greek material that I had discerned, there were descriptions of light coming in to the woman's womb. And a ray of light from the heavens, or the moon, or whatever, something like that. So these astral, what does that mean? Well, this is a conception from the moon, whatever was going on in the moon, which is a mixed bag. This is a conception from Mars, right? We've got Mars is the foundational god or planet or intelligences that are associated with Rome. But Rome was a mixed bag. Because Mars was a mixed bag, because not only were your beloved solar rishis up there, but we had reptilians and whatnot. Okay. So we don't know who Romulus was and who Remus was, but what we do know is that their mother, Rhea Silvia, was one of the older Vestal virgins who was used in that impregnation by Mars, and then chained up, and her babies were thrown in the river. So some people wanted it. Some people didn't want them. They ended up surviving. They got into a fight because this represents the fight of the Nephilim and the solar rishis, and one killed the other. And then they start, creating this empire. Initially, it was under good hands. Numa, he was a blessed being who was cavorting with Egeria, who was a being on the other side of the veil. She gave him all his information of how to create a beautiful republic. But at some point afterward, and I don't know, I haven't discerned when, those reptilians really came in and they took over Rome. And before you know it, you've got Caligula, Elagabalus, Nero, and all of these people who are just a total nightmare. And then what happens is the Catholic Church, alien ship lands St. Peter's, boom. And that's what we got today.
In terms of synchronicities, this will be hard to believe for you, but Romulus and Remus, right? With the brothers at the founding of Rome, raised by a she-wolf, one kills the other.
They were divinely born of Rhea Silvia.
Well, so yesterday I decided that I wanted to print out some photos that I've been meaning to have here in my home for some time. I go to the Walmart. I plug in my iPhone to the booth, and there's a little counter where the guys, okay, here's the ones you ordered, here's your photos. And so I'm at my little cubicle and I'm uploading, several pictures that I want printed. And there's this little guy with the scraggly little beard, and he's working at Walmart. He's, kind of a little bit disabled, but he's very, sweet, intelligent guy. And I hear him over my cubicle about 6 feet away. He's talking to a customer, a young guy. And he says, well, but you probably don't know about Romulus and Remus, do you? You probably don't know about the origin story of Rome, do you? Because you see what happened was, and I'm going, I don't believe this. Romulus and Remus, really? Because I just finished, I'm kind of a Roman history buff. I just finished a book called The Last Assassin, which is about how Octavius Caesar, Julius Caesar's nephew, who later became Augustus, ended up, in the Civil War with Antony and Lepidus and all the rest of them. The final showdown with Cleopatra, the Battle of Actium, tracks down the very last killer of Julius Caesar. So I couldn't resist, of course. I come around the counter and I say, Romulus and Remus, really? Wow. Here, and he says, oh, yeah, I had a wonderful history teacher. And so we talked about Romulus and Remus, and you probably know the answer to this, because I posed the question to him. Okay, the Roman festival, is it the Lupercalia where they celebrate Romulus and Remus? The Lupercal, Shakespeare references it. You all did see that on the Lupercal at thrice presided.
The Saturnalia.
Saturnalia. Okay, there you go.
I'm not sure. Roman history, but let me insert. Okay, first of all, this is how they work. And of course, he's going to be a little off, right? Because
right.
The information is coming through, right? The off people, like in the Hindu festivals, you have to be friendly to everyone because you never know who the goddess is going to come through, the most unlikely, unsuspecting person. Well, Augustus Caesar's mother, Atia, is said to have divinely born Augustus Caesar. You see, so these shenanigans were going on throughout the entire Roman Empire. And I can tell you, I personally believe that these Vestal virgins were being used for impregnations.
And not in as somewhat tainted way, is that what?
Yes, via the Pontifex Maximus, the head priest, whose title later was given to the Pope.
I know, that blows me away. Julius Caesar had himself made Pontifex Maximus before, so that he'd be immune from prosecution, By the way, we're still going to we know it's a Roman Empire thing, but we're still going to call the Pope the Pontifex Maximus.
Besides which, he wants to be with these little Vestal girls. Okay, because that Pontifex Maximus, what I channel is that, he was doing those girls.
Yeah.
Well, most likely, of course, the Vestal virgins, if they were found to be not virgins, were like stoned to death or whatever.
No, they were buried alive. Let me describe to you. Buried alive in a chamber with a little bit of food and water. So they would technically die of natural causes.
Well, I feel that some of the Vestal virgins, there were a core group of Vestal virgins that were the true thing. They weren't.
That's right.
But they had, again, they proselytized the ones that they were able to bring them over to the other side. Yeah.
So,
That's right. Well, how could these girls refuse? They're given over at 6 years old. They're totally controlled from day one as it is. Mm-hmm. And if the Virgo Maxima lady is corrupted, then her little girls under her are going to be corrupted too. So, I think it was a degeneration over time. Mm-hmm. But I'm telling you, they ran that Roman Empire on the yoni power of those girls.
They had to emerge somewhere.
You see, this is these reversals. Siphoning off the womb power of these girls represented by that fire of Rome. God forbid if that fire went out. They would be whipped. Mm-hmm. By whom? The Pontifex Maximus, who probably enjoyed it.
Well, there's when we look at the coming in, as you say, of this, alien ship, the Catholic Church sort of getting planted on this. When we look at the Magdalene and the two quite separate traditions and lineages and churches that emerged in the early centuries of the Christian era, what was called the Johannine Christianity and the Petrine, or the Peter centralized authority rock Church of Rome.
Don't get me started on that.
Okay, well, all right. So let me just frame it a little bit, because of my Templar background and my Cathar study, it's particularly poignant for me, which is that, what were called the Cathars in the Languedoc region of France, who were exterminated in the Albigensian Crusade, who were closely allied to the Templars. I think at least 2 Templar grandmasters actually were Cathars. That they traced their lineage directly to the Magdalene line, to the Holy See of Antioch, not that of Rome. And this is where the purer, meditative, direct communion without need of priestly intermediary, that they traced their trek around the Mediterranean basin and eventually to the Languedoc as being a true Magdalene lineage of original Christianity, which of course was intolerable to Rome. So they set up basically a false flag, accused somebody of something as an excuse to carry out the appalling genocide, which still breaks my heart to this day. We all know about Constantine, and he decides to make Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. And so you've got this, essentially terrible tainting and pollution of what still remained of the authentic Christic stream with the Roman, it becomes Roman Empire, it becomes Roman corruption, the systemic pedophilia.
That's right.
Creep its way into the institution of Rome, and
continuation of the Nephilim incursion.
Yeah, and it's still corrupted as it is, tainted as it is. The Roman structure remained tainted, and within it, in parishes and churches and monasteries, and in North Africa and the Desert Fathers and the great saints such as Teresa of Avila and Catherine of Siena, and all these, the Christic stream can't be touched no matter how bad the Roman inheritance is. Exactly. That's what, in my I did, quite a few years of work in an attempt to lineally restore the original Templar order. And I found, the work that Maia and I are doing here, Blue Star Rising, the Templar Awakening, is because it doesn't matter the outer form. Lineage, legitimacy, lovely, nice try, guys. Are you with the Magdalene or not? So with that as a little introduction, if you could, it's one of the questions actually that Roxy shared with us. Could you move a little bit into discussing the role of the Magdalene and how you work with virgin birth? Because Mary Magdalene is coming forward so much more prominently now.
Yeah. First of all, I am giving Peter a big throttling right now. I am annoyed with that guy. Okay? He was a problem from day one. He was possessed, and the apostles as much say it in that Gospel of Mary Magdalene. They're like, you are acting like the archons or whatever, the adversaries, da-da-da-da-da. Basically, he was possessed, okay? He got possessed by his own ego, and he got possessed by jealousy, and he got possessed by these beings. So he started to take over. The fact of the matter is, the first person who carried out the Christic enterprise after Jesus was born was Mary. Okay, and this is going to be my book next year, but I'm already teaching about it in the Mother Mary Mystery Teachings that I offer at Seven Sisters Mystery School. I've looked at her apocryphal biographies, and I'm like, oh, Maximus the Confessor and so forth, those biographies. No, she was running the show. Magdalene was later. You see, this is the thing, we have to get the chronology right. Because if we don't restore the mother, we don't restore anything about the feminine. Magdalene was the first step. We had to de-prostitutionalize her. We had to, legitimize her and so forth and so on. She was the easier one to get with. But now we've got to go all the way back to Mary, and that's what this book is. The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception is the beginning of this Mary evolution, because Mother Mary ran the church. She was the one that they all came back to at Easter time. She said, go far and wide, teach the gospel. Here are some books. There literally were books that she gave them. Then they would come back at Easter and she'd be like, how did it go? And they would lean on her shoulder. They would do this and that. Yes, she went with John, to various places. She ended her life somewhere somewhere in, I don't know, Ephesus or, right, you know, I've got to like get my
Ephesus.
Ephesus, right? Okay. John became her guardian, right? So Magdalene was taught by Mother Mary.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. This is the thing we need to understand. Let's get it in proper order. Let's restore the honor of the elder female women.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Enough with the sexy whatever, okay? Yeah, Magdalene, all well and good. We needed her. She's still here. She's with us now. But her teacher was Mary. Her mother-in-law was Mary.
You know, there's
okay?
Go ahead.
Mary is the one who knew how to do parthenogenesis, okay? Self-conception. We need to get this straight. We need to absolutely restore Mary as the head of this church and this whole entire enterprise. And Kaleshwar rightly says that she was even greater than Jesus if we're going to do a hierarchy. Okay? We've got to get this straight, because if we don't, we're going to miss the boat this time around.
Yeah, and it's something that I see even in my own family. I was raised Catholic, big Irish Catholic family, 10 kids, and one of my sisters has experienced a rekindling of a very personal, direct relationship with Christ, and has moved away, you know, from Catholic reverence for Mother Mary, because she goes, oh yeah, that's just this Catholic thing, and they want to distract us from Jesus, and
right.
You know, she's all good and everything. But of course she does, my sister does, still have the gorgeous stained glass window that was in our dining room of Mother Mary. But there is this, you know, devaluing of her. And, you know, then you have recently Pope Francis saying, okay, hey, the co-redemptrix thing, no, I don't think so. You know, well, what you're describing in terms of, you know, the Christosophia union is exactly that. Now, it's coming forward irresistibly. I mean, Pope Francis can say, no, co-redemptrix, I'm sorry. Okay, so for dogmatic Catholics, the Pope has spoken. But it's coming forward irresistibly is
right.
what I'm sensing.
That's right. I mean, the mystical tradition, those who are going into this initiation into deeper dimensional consciousness are getting with what you're saying here, you know?
Yeah.
And people who want to stay on the dogmatic timeline can do that. If that's their medicine, great.
You know,
yeah.
I have
Maia.
Just a second here. I received something from Thoth that I wrote many years ago, and I have a little blurb of it in my archived website. I'll have to share you that page with you. But it speaks about Mother Mary as being the head. It talks about what you're saying. And I didn't, you know, this is something I received years ago, and I'm just going to share that with you because it does align a lot.
I know. We have to restore the elder women back to, and guess what? You didn't need to be young like Mary to conceive parthenogenetically. You could be older like Anne.
Yeah.
You could be older like Sarah. You could be older like Elizabeth, technically past fertile bearing years, you know, fertile childbearing years. And you could still do it because these women were virgins their whole life until they conceived.
Mm-hmm.
Another,
and it didn't have to do with menstruation and biology on that level, because what I receive and I write in the book is they weren't even menstruating anyway. They were disconnected from the moon. That's number one thing that has to happen if you want virgin birth. You've got to disconnect from the cycles of the moon, because the moon is not our friend. Okay. Yeah. The moon is an artificial thing that was set there that we've all gotten used to and that our menstrual cycles have gotten trained to, but it's creating, you know, it's still at the behest of the negative beings that are operating on that moon. So the women had to fast so that and wear certain kind of clothing and food, eat certain kind of food, so that they would disconnect from the cycles of the moon, because the menstrual cycle technically is connected with ovulation with the full moon, menstruation with the new moon. They had to decouple from that so that they could connect to a star, and a conception could come through a star, not from a star through the moon to the womb, because the moon was a filtration system. into our wombs is just something I'm just channeling right now. You know, it's like they needed to be able to get directly to the star, get the moon out of it. Okay.
You know, according to Thoth, there were two moons, two natural moons originally. One fell because of certain situations I won't go into, and the other one was sort of destroyed, but it was still hanging in there. And then the negative ones came and recreated it. You know, so it's
in their image,
right? Yeah, but the consciousness of the original moons is still prevails with us if we can reach beyond that. However, so as you'll see in the arc series that I gave you, the heart arc, he also speaks about the true emphasis on the solar feminine, the solar feminine. And even that has to come through, you know, when it does come through the moon, he's speaking of this higher resonance field that was the original two moon polarity. But so he speaks of the solar feminine.
And you know, Lisa Renee is channeling the same thing these days, and I so honor these female channelers right now, you know, who are really bringing forth the information we need. Maia, you, and I have this posse of others that I listen to. That's where it's at. They are the oracles. We are bringing through this information. Okay, it is time. We are not fooling around anymore. We've got to be listening to our female oracles and studying them. These are the Sibylline oracles. These are the Bibles that we should be consulting. Everything that you're saying, Maia, everything that Lisa Renee is saying, you know, various other channelers. Okay? I mean, this is it. Mother Mary was of seer. And I write in my book, The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, that she had this amazing vision as she is going across the desert, ding, 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 with Joseph, who wasn't even her husband, he was her guardian. They're going across the desert, right, because of the stupid census thing. Like they were trying to track people then, contact trace people then, just the way that they're doing now. And they had to fall victim to that crap and go traveling all the way over there. The woman's pregnant, my God. And then he's like, how am I going to register her? She's not really my wife. She's not really, you know, my daughter. Okay. She has this vision out in the middle of the desert while she's pregnant. And what Joseph says is he sees her smiling one minute and in like sorrow the next. And he's like, Mary, what's going on? And she says, it's because I see two people in front of me. One is wailing and gnashing their teeth and so deeply unhappy, and the other is really like, you know, exalted. And this is our world. This is what the advent of Christ brought in extreme polarity, three-dimensional reality, right?
Yeah.
So we're all trying to go into this Christic, Sophianic, higher consciousness, deeper consciousness level, so that, as Magenta Pixie is telling us, the polarities get less extreme at that level. And instead of good and evil, you simply have wisdom and love. Those are the two polarities that are there, which hardly feels like a polarity at all. Yet it's still respecting the laws of polarity in this universe, okay? So, and I think that Elizabeth, mother of John the Baptist, you know, I am on to John the Baptist now. Like, something is going on with that guy, and I'm going to find out what it was. And I know that there are people who are really big into him, and, you know, he was beheaded. Okay, here's the thing. These Christed avatars that are born, of which John was one, by virtue of his mother being in that same ritual that Mary was in to do this divine conception, the avatar is supposed to have a ritual sacrificial death, not an ignominious murder. Now, Jesus barely made it. He was able to turn this thing around and create a ritual death for himself, not an ignominious murder. But John the Baptist was not so lucky. He got caught up with these women who were all, you know, kind of sexually depraved, and they decided to cut his head off. Okay, so he had no ritual. So he could not have his ascension. Okay, I think this is a problem. We need to have John's ascension. And some people have, I think that there is a holy order dedicated to John the Baptist because they recognize him.
Yeah,
But
there's something.
he was a cousin of Jesus, okay?
Mm-hmm.
He something went wrong there that needs to be rectified. Talk about a reparation that needs to happen.
Mm. Yeah, there's actually, I can bring forward something else from Yogananda in this, because in the same book, he shares his realization that John the Baptist and Jesus were in relation to each other in earlier incarnations as the prophet Elijah and Elisha, who was Elijah's disciple, Elisha, and that John the Baptist was in fact Jesus' guru in that incarnation.
Wow.
And that there is a passage in the Old Testament in which Elijah, nearing the end of his life, says, ask whatsoever thou wilt of me, and it shall be granted unto thee. And his disciple, Elisha, says to him, let a double portion of thy grace, thy mantle, fall upon me. Elijah says, thou hast asked a hard thing. The mantle of his spiritual powers is, but when I'm taken from thee, let it be so unto thee. And the mantle of his full divine realization falls upon Elisha as part of the preparation for his incarnation as Jesus. And that there, it's referenced in the Gospels where he says, and if you will receive it, this was Elijah. He's referring to John the Baptist. That's right there in the Gospels.
Wow.
And so it is, Yogananda references it many times. And he simply says, this is, what I have received in meditation and realization. And it's backed up by scripture in many places. So, yeah, and it's...
what a karma.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Pretty about as powerful as it gets.
Wow, what a karma. That's so
Yeah.
interesting. So where do we want to go from here? Because there might be a few other things that we could share from the book that might be interesting to people.
Yeah, well, and again, everybody, just so we can keep everybody keyed in on the offering that's forthcoming from Marguerite, April 6th, from Inner Traditions, Bear and Company, the Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, Mary, and the Lineage of Virgin Births by Marguerite Mary Rigoglioso. So one of the questions that here, how might women of our world who wish to go deeper with their own spiritual practices use what you've uncovered? I mean, we love to make everything we bring forward, our subtitle on Blue Star Rising is Applied Sacred Science for the Global Crisis. So how might women of our world who wish to go deeper with their own spiritual practices use what you're bringing forward, Marguerite?
Yeah. Well, where the story of Mary and the history of Mary meets contemporary times, I think, is in the work of Sri Kaleshwar and the Holy Womb Chakra teachings. Because he reveals, taking from the ancient palm leaf manuscripts, some of the mantras that Mary herself used. And these are part of the teachings that I was trained in, I have used to clear my own womb, and that I teach for women in my version of the Holy Womb Chakra teachings. I know there are other teachers that are doing it now. Cindy Lindsay is my honored teacher. I know Alex is teaching it. We all each have our own flavor. But there's a very practical mechanism that goes on with that, where we meet with what may well have been some of Mary's mantras and practices to purify our wombs for whatever we want to do, whether it is to do divine parthenogenesis eventually, or whether it is to conceive a child divinely in union with a man, because there are a two mantra sequence to do that, to bring in a higher level being, because women need to get way more conscious about their pregnancy and their conception, and what and who they're bringing in, and to know that they even can bring in a variety of people to their bodies, because we need these advanced souls coming in.
Yes.
Okay. And then women can use these practices to clear their womb for their creative purposes and practices and projects, and their healing practices of others. So it's like a whole comprehensive global thing that of attention to the womb that needs to happen. And one of the entry points, as I'm saying, are these holy womb chakra teachings of the ancient palm leaf manuscripts, which he says came from the rishis, the solar rishis, who are intimately, in the Hindu tradition, in one story, connected with the seven sisters of the Pleiades. They were the female counterparts bringing this information in. And then there's this whole story of that they got co-opted and corrupted and raped, and they were hybrided onto the planet. The seven, I could go on and on. So the thing is that women need to get way more conscious about their wombs. A lot of women are doing different types of practices, physical practices, tantric sexual practices, tantric interdimensional practices, and these holy womb chakra teachings are a critical part of it, a semi-intact tradition if people want to get serious about this, and or they can just start receiving their own information on, okay, what do I need to bring in to clear my own womb, to elevate my own womb, to bring in higher dimensional being children if I want that, or higher dimensional projects, to become a world healer, and also to say no to alien abduction.
Yeah.
Mm. Touching on that, Marguerite, this has reminded me of another passage in Yogananda where he is talking about Armageddon and, just sort of disassembling the myth of the end of the world and all the rest of it. And he says, in this age, the real Armageddon will be fought on the fourth dimensional astral level between souls seeking incarnation, between negative and positive souls seeking human incarnation. That it is a fourth dimensional battle going on, and that the work you're describing is what prepares the vessels and the process whereby the balance is tipped. As we say very many times here, Maia keeps bringing it up, it's a heart activation tipping point on this planet, that when there is a critical number of heart activated human souls on the planet, then we tip towards the ascension timeline. And that, well, it's going to be determined by the kind of souls who come in, which is going to be determined by the kind of work, exactly this high exalted work that you're describing.
The women are the gardens, the gardeners, and the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Maia, could you please?
Matrices.
Yeah. So one of the things we've been working with in our quantum cube integrative process is I went off into space, and then it went like this, and I forgot it.
You always come back. I notice you always come back.
Yeah. It is okay. Working with, Thothis has told me that rather recently that the souls in the astral, he said, yes, there's some really negative, evil stuff up there, but they're feeding off of lost souls that get trapped in the astral. Yeah, they have had a rough time. They have made bad choices in their incarnations, and things happen, but they're not, they can be redeemed. They have a center that's still active, but they're like going, where am I? They're in this astral soup. And so what happens is the archonically invested ones, the really, really heavy invested ones, they're feeding off of them. Yeah. They're feeding off of them. They got this zombie army, let's call it, that they're feeding off of. But he said, if we can help these lost souls find their own inner redemption, which is easier than you might think if more people focused on that.
That's right.
then the really yucky archonic things can go, we don't have, where's our fodder? You know, we don't have the juice we need, the juju we need. So that's one of the things that it's in the mix of what we're working with the quantum logic integrative, is to work with. There's a lot of things, but that's one of the ones we recently were working with, you know. And what we do is we create what Thoth calls a continuum line. You know, we can't do everything, of course not. We're just a little group of people, but he's saying that if you create a continuum line, just a small group of people can do that. And then the ultra ones, the spiritual, they can work with that continuum line, because we are genetically solvent beings on this physical surface Earth. And that's what they need, just like the negatives need that. Well, they need that to help find that path so they can clear out things, help to clear them out once we create that continuum line. We as human beings on this planet, you know. So anyway, I just felt that was really germane to some of what you're saying here, is that there's all these astral souls that really need help. I mean, let's be compassionate here and help them. That's because people leave these ghost shows and everything. Oh God, there's this ghost in the corner and he's been haunting and he does all this stuff. And I'm thinking, yeah, let's give the guy a break. Help him out. You know?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, that's beautiful.
Go ahead, Marguerite.
And, you know, Michael, I think we need the awakened heart and we need the awakened womb, which is in a way the same thing, because the Hrudaya is the heart and it's also the womb kind of at the same time in Kaleshwar's teaching. So both of them are governed by prema, love, right?
Yeah.
So
and
we need that awaken. You see, they've cut off women from their knowledge of the womb and the prema and the consciousness of the womb. I mean, just think of how many of us have been unconscious about our womb power, our mothers. I mean, conscious conception, my God, you know.
And
so,
men, of course, too, as well, being deprived of the knowledge of, you know, the balance within of our own connection to the divine feminine, that aspect of our being. And it's such a delicate line that you know, I see has to be walked in recognizing and embracing the restoration, the reemergence, the rebalancing of the divine feminine. Not to, you know, for the masculine to just go, oh, I've been part of this, you know, evil patriarchy and I'm just by my nature. No, you know, this tribalizing by gender has got to stop.
No, absolutely.
As souls, you know, come in, you know, male incarnation, female incarnation, the soul is sexless. And you know, and it's a tragedy, I see, where, you know, men become either you know, putting themselves down, or become resentful, or it's no, the divine feminine is within us. It is, you know, the sacred masculine, the exaltation of it, the balance of it. It's one of the things that, you know, as a Templar, just I keep going, please, you know, we worshiped, that we revered the divine feminine as a practice we had to be, you know, kind of subversive about to get away with, and eventually got burned at the stake for. But, you know, it was always about balance. It's an esoteric tradition going back many thousands of years before the medieval order. So anyway, just wanted.
And you know, Michael, I really want to make it clear that when I say patriarchy, basically I mean Nephilim reptilian interference, okay? Because it's not men. It may be that men got a little more hooked in because it was often these male beings from these planets and locations that were governing this, because they were escaping from the queens who were actually more powerful than they are. So they came all over here and they're all with their male agendas and they're all with their phallic swords, because they remember the vagina dentata of the queens who weren't going to have any of it. Okay,
and of course, the sword also, the sword also has, you know, a more exalted symbolic meaning.
Of course.
As truth, as, you know, the primordial assertive principle in creation.
Right. It becomes inverted and satanic when it's under the hands of these people in this polarity, you see. But it's actually a magical wand. It's an Excalibur, right?
Exactly.
So I want to make it clear, when I'm talking about this, I am not talking about men, blaming men, anything like that. I'm talking about, look, we've all gotten hooked into this. The Nephilim, Anunnaki, reptilian beings have known that one of the major things, though, that needed to go was the women, because they knew that we had the womb and they couldn't get around it, you see? So that's why the women have gotten one down. And because they can't have us have that knowledge, because then they can't do their agendas, right?
Well, yeah, it's too late. I mean, their agenda is history as far as I'm concerned.
Right. So, but now with this work coming out, and the idea of the historicity of Mary's conception of Jesus and it being a real virgin birth thing, it's going to unlock all these codes for people so that they can have their actual own inner divine birth ascension.
Right. And with that, you know, the Christ comes back into our hearts and reality as well. As this is something Maia shared, that some of the work that we're doing here in our own, you know, small way, there's many, hopefully millions on the planet doing it, but that specifically within our Templar lineage, that this work, particularly, you know, with the restoration of the divine feminine, can lift his living image from the clay, Christ's living image from the clay. You know, when I read, there's a condensation of this wonderful book I showed you, you know, 2-volume is a slim condensation called The Yoga of Jesus by Yogananda. And when you bring forward all of what you're sharing, Marguerite, to me, it is this incredibly powerful double impact, irresistible, ultimately irresistible, sweeping over this attempt to essentially destroy, make irrelevant, make obsolete the power of the Christic Sophia stream on the planet. And we ain't having it.
Nope.
You know.
Nope. Mary is back. Mm-hmm.
There's something that Thoth's take on this, which is a little different from what is out there a lot, I'm assuming, about the Anunnaki, is that the reptilian aspect is their creations. They are subservient to the real Anunnaki, and the real Anunnaki are relations of the human kindred that broke away, that fell from grace. Now, the important thing about this, first of all, they created some reptilians to connect to our reptilian quote unquote brains, which were not created by them, but part of another aspect of just nature. But the reptilian beings could be their go-between for that. It's sort of a worker bee kind of thing. But they're not the real Anunnaki. According to Thoth, the real Anunnaki were human-like, like the beautiful solar rishis and whatever, but they fell from grace. Yes. They separated from that stream. And that's why one of them, was an Aniki, said, hey, I'm not doing this anymore. I want to go back to the stream, and we're going to do, you know, because I want to get this back on track. But anyway, so the point I'm making here is that according to Thoth, because they are part of our kindred that broke away, we are having a greater struggle. If they were just complete aliens coming down and, you know, and doing a thing, that would not be fun. It would be War of the Worlds or whatever, but it would not be what it is, because there's a part of our being that's genetically connected to them, not because they inbred with us, but because they were part of the original streaming that fell away. So we have a different scenario here that's more difficult for us to separate from. It's easier to separate from something that's just completely alien to you. Maybe they seeded you in some way, but originally alien to something part of the source ray, you know, that fell away.
It's like there are brothers and sisters, and we're divided against ourselves. So we're you know, the good angel, bad angel is within us, and it's
exactly.
I mean, that's why the initiation is so intense. This is part of the initiation, is the coming to terms with that karma, those lineages. But it had to be that way, because that is the ultimate kind of initiation.
It is indeed.
To come to terms with the shadow within yourself and the light within yourself, and that you are that. I am that. I am, right? Okay.
And he also says that we made that as a human race, a part of the human race made an agreement with the Anunnaki to be their slaves so that they could become gods. And that part that did that said, take me, so I can drink your elixir and I can become a god too. And when we did that, when that part of humanity did that, it literally spoiled the wine. It flowed through the whole stream. And that's why Thoth said to me, well, why did the sun, like sun lords, but they're the solar rishis, and he's called them Adura rishis or something at one time. Why did they all take off and leave during the Zep Tepi time and leave us to these? He said, you didn't leave them. We left, you didn't leave us, we left you. And he meant that we made a bargain with the devil, not all of the humanity, but enough of it that it spoiled the wine, so to speak. And they had to remove themselves until we could get certain things straight and work it out on a certain level. And then they said, okay, let's start the reparations. We'll help out a little bit.
Okay. So we've been going through this whole drama as a very necessary spiritual deepening and initiation process, essentially. I mean, it's excruciating, right? It's the highest level initiation you can go through in the universe.
It is indeed. And now people are doing it again. Some people are saying, hey, I want to drink that wine too. I want to have immortality. Let me drink the wine. I'll just accept whoever you throw into the bucket so I can drink the wine. And it's the same.
Yeah, and this is where we see it, so much everywhere now. The cheapening of lineage, the cheapening of the word priestess. God help us on Facebook. Everybody's constantly changing their names. Okay, fine. Discover a new part of your identity. Give yourself a new name. That's part of an initiatic tradition in its own way, but it's become cool, hip. See, I got to have a Celtic name. I need a Lakota name, and I need a Hindu name. And because I feel this, and there are very few, such as yourself, Marguerite, who are going into the depth of what an initiatory path is, of what preparation is, of what shadow work is, of what, avoiding the easy entitlement path of, I'm a woman, therefore I'm a goddess, and therefore I'm a priestess, and so I'm going to put a picture of myself on Facebook wearing, and I'm a priestess, or I'm a shamanista, whatever you want to call yourself, right? And it is just so refreshing. I can't tell you how much, it does my heart good to witness authentic, deep, initiatory training and being brought forth in the depth that you're bringing it forth, the scholarly depth, the mystical depth, your own receivings, the full spectrum. Anyway.
Well, thank you. And you know why? Because I was a reptilian.
Really?
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, I've already been the worst of the worst. And I was among the fallen angels. And the reason I know that is because my very first mushroom trip, I was like, what is going on? I feel like I've done the thing that's unforgivable. What is this? What is this? And it took me years of connecting with people to understand, holy crap, that was a memory of the fallen angels, that I was part of that group of the fallen angels. So it's like, we're all back. We've all been everything. But, you have to access the depths of hell within yourself in order to do anything worthwhile, really.
Yeah, it's something that Yogananda's guru, Swami Sri Yukteswara, said to him at one point. He says, the past lives of all souls are dark with many shames.
Completely.
Everything in future will improve if you are making a spiritual effort now. And, when you're talking about on the fourth dimensional level where these souls are feeding on these confused souls, and, that this is what's going on, and that Armageddon is about what sanctified vessels doing this divine work of drawing in these higher souls. What came to me is there's this very famous passage from the Bhagavad Gita regarding, okay, how do we get to the light? Is it, oh my God, the karma and the beings feeding off of us and people are lost in the astral. Is this famous saying of Lord Krishna in the Gita, where it says, even a little practice of this sacred rite will save you from great fear. Swalpamapasya dharmasya trayat mahatobayat. And that and for Yogananda, he equates it to, the sacred practice in the spine, in the astral spine of Kriya Yoga. Even a little practice of the sacred rite will, raise your soul to a vibration where these, leeches, spiritual leeches, cannot touch you.
Yeah.
And this is what's, this great divine dispensation that's flowing in right now, through you, through Maia, and through many others. And this is just an enormously encouraging day and program.
Blessed be, blessed be.
Yeah.
And it's like Maia, I mean, because of the karma that I have a kind of a memory about of being the worst of the worst, I know that struggle that you're talking about, pitted against ourselves, right? And so part of my initiation in this lifetime is to, because I'm kind of a warrior about all this, right? Because it's like, I'm the nouveau riche of, somebody who's gotten back into the light after being in the dark, right? But, my initiation now is that I need to go back to the brethren and sistren and say, hey, okay, I was that, I am that. Okay, so now I need to be kind of how can I be constructively compassionate and discerning around this to not other them and not other myself, in this process. That's the Christed initiation, right? That's the Marian initiation that we're all going through at the deepest level. It is the reclamation of the shadow and the embrace of it somehow.
Well, could you tell us a little bit more about the Seven Sisters Mystery School, your esoteric sisterhood, and the process of it, and how it's being brought forward for people?
Yes, I founded it in 2012, basically leaving academia, and there really wasn't space for one such as myself there, even in the most, on the edge schools. And so I was able to get support of a mentor at the time and create this school. And basically I channeled all of my academic material into this work. And then I started having experiential components, and offering courses and events and rituals, and, started stepping into more moving from the scholar, practitioner, moving from the scholar into the practitioner, right? And so I've been teaching a variety of courses throughout the years, all of which are still available online, but we're focusing on, the Holy Trinity of the Mother Mary Mystery Teachings, the Holy Womb Chakra Teachings, and my Divine Birth Mysteries audio series, because this really is the foundation and the explication of what's in my book, okay, and my other books as well. So I've continued to offer those kinds of courses, and there were many in-person things that I did when I lived in the Bay Area. Now I live on the East Coast. I moved from Lemuria to Atlantis. Oh, joy. And I give one-on-one mentoring and coachings to people. So, people can go to the sevensistersmysteryschool.com site. There are many things that are available, also free things, videos, audios, interviews, and I hope to see people, and we're looking forward to hearing commentary on the book on the Seven Sisters Mystery School Facebook page. So at the end of each chapter, we say, hey, what do you think about this chapter? How's this striking you? Why don't you go over to the Facebook group and comment? So we're hoping to have lots of people come and offer their ideas and their sharings that way as well.
Well, we also very much look forward to inviting you to a conference that the Sacred Academy of Gaia Evolution will be offering later this summer. We're in the planning stages of it, hopefully both virtual and in person here in the gorgeous wilderness of Crestone, Colorado. Wow. And I mean, to have you as part of that would be just amazing. So
I'll try to behave.
Don't bother. No,
you don't want to behave. That's not it, right?
That you don't behave. Yeah.
I'm pretty passionate about this, right?
I've noticed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is,
That will is what's allowed me to come forth with this book, you know.
yeah.
So I need to kind of temper this will into something, you know, mature and grounded.
Well,
Well,
I get
go
pretty
ahead.
passionate myself, so I understand that.
Yeah, I think all three of us have that, or we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have gotten through, everything that we needed to come to
That's right.
being able to offer this.
You needed
Uh,
that chutzpah.
exactly. So
Through
again,
the,
for everyone, this is Mary and the Technology of Divine Birth. I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. Um, the Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, Mary and the Lineage of Virgin Births by Dr. Marguerite Mary Rigoglioso. So it feels like we're reaching a wrap-up point. I give it to both of you. If you would, Maia, if you want to just reflect, and then I'll ask Marguerite to sort of summarize what she'd like to have as a final message to you. Is there anything you'd like to just reflect on about today, Maia?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a great pleasure to have Marguerite on with us and to feel the kindredship. And a lot of what you're saying, I mean, most of it is, so totally connected with the work that I do and receive. It's always nice to find that, I mean, you have it within yourself, but it's the same time, it's just good to find that kindredship, in the effort and the practice and the spirit. So I've greatly enjoyed that. So I guess that's really all I have to say.
yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I am so honored to be here. This has been so activating for me. Like I said, I wanted to like take off in a rocket ship the whole time. And I just thank you. I thank you both for the work you have been, you are doing, and you will be doing. And it's breakfast food for me. I put these things on, I listen, and I'm so gratified because pieces are coming into place for me with the work that you two are talking about and doing. And just really so honored to be here. And I just encourage people to check out the book, The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, because I think that it will unlock a lot of codes in people's minds that they need to have unlocked at this time for their greater spiritual growth.
Indeed.
Indeed. Well, and such a pleasure for me too. Thank you, Marguerite. And I look forward to follow up. Clearly, there are just so many resonances here that I'm sure we'll be in touch. And this program will be swiftly edited and shared on our YouTube channel, and hopefully, to all of your community and following. So, thank you, everyone, for joining us and tuning in, and for our wonderful guest, Dr. Marguerite Mary Rigoglioso, and Reverend Maia Nartoomid. This is Michael Henry Dunn. Thank you. God bless us, everyone, and we'll see you next time.